So the week that this video is going up is actually my birthday week. In honor of my birthday, I thought we would try and do a Pisces mix. So Arctic Fox actually has 2 Pisces mixes so far, because they did one this year and last year. Originally, I was gonna do this year's, but I tried to avoid doing mixes where there are dyes that I haven't used before. And this year is Violet Dream and Sterling, which sounds very beautiful, but I have not done either of those dyes. Last year's is, as you see, Neverland and Poseidon, which I've at least done Poseidon before, so I thought that would be a little bit better of an idea. Plus, I've gotten some requests to do more greens, I'm assuming for St. Patrick's Day. And this might be the closest I can get to doing a green before then. So I have my swatches labeled 1 through 10. That's not synonymous with hair levels, if it's not obvious. 1 is a natural red, 2 is black, and then from 2 up to 9, it's a range that goes up to platinum blonde, and then number 10 is like the toned version of platinum blonde. So this time, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do 2 parts. Usually I do 3 for my mixes, but I think this time I'm going to have the top have more Neverland, and then the bottom pieces will have more Poseidon. So the top half having more Neverland, it's going to be 1 tablespoon of Neverland and 1/4 teaspoon of Poseidon. And then for the bottom half, we're doing a ratio of 1 tablespoon of Neverland, but this time 1/2 teaspoon of Poseidon. Okay, I'm gonna let these sit for about 3 hours. I will rinse them out and let them dry. Once they're dry, I will meet you back here. No matter what, the top part was gonna be 1 tablespoon to 1/4 teaspoon. But for the bottom part, originally I had 1 tablespoon to 1 teaspoon. And when I was swatching it, because I'll usually swatch it on some paper towel before, it looked way too blue. Like, it almost looked like Poseidon by itself. You could see a little bit of green, but I didn't think it would work on the hair. So I went through this whole thing trying to figure out how to, like, keep the ratio even, but, like, lessen the Poseidon. And if you're wondering, the top half is a 12-to-1 ratio, and then the bottom half is a 6-to-1 ratio. So I know Neverland is a pastel dye, which is usually only good for very light hair. And even though Poseidon can dye slightly darker, there's not as much Poseidon in this, so it makes sense that 7 to 10 looks the most saturated and intense. You can see it on number 6 and 5, but it doesn't really look intentional. And then because the Neverland is so pastel, in my opinion, I think 9 and 10 look the best. So I don't have any hair that I can think of that looks exactly like this for comparisons. Like I said, I haven't done Neverland yet, but when I do, I will definitely compare this in that video. And I figure for the first comparison, we'll just do Poseidon from Arctic Fox, since that is one of the colors in the mixture. So this is comparable to number 10, 9, 8, 7, and 6. On the diluted section for number 9 is probably going to be the most similar for this comparison at least. There's a little bit of yellow in the platinum blonde hair, which will interact with the blue, so it looks a hair bit green on the diluted, very, very diluted section, but you can tell still that there's a lot of Neverland, so it's not completely the same. And obviously I didn't use that much Poseidon, so there's not going to be a huge similarity. Arctic Fox does make a bluish green, and it's a very, very pigmented dye, but I'm kind of curious about the diluted sections and see if it's similar at all. And that is Aquamarine for Arctic Fox. So this is comparable to number 10, 9, 8, 7, and 6. So for number 7 and 8, I feel like the diluted sections actually look pretty similar, but I feel like on number 8, the Aquamarine is brighter, and then as you get lighter through the hair, the diluted section just kind of stays with that brightness. Let's see, so the bottom half has more Poseidon than the top. And in my opinion, I do think this part looks more similar to this part. Just a little bit more Poseidon mixed in. So I would say that if you like a little bit more of a muted tone for your hair, the Neverland and Poseidon mixed would probably be better. But if you wanted it to be a little bit brighter, you could probably just dilute Aquamarine and get a similar color that's a little bit more saturated. My next comparison is going to be Sea Witch from Lime Crime. So this is going to be another bluish green, but this one leans a lot more green. This is comparable to number 10, number 9, number 8, number 7, and number 6. I feel like this is a similar situation as the Aquamarine, where if you dilute this enough, it would probably look similar, but brighter. But I do feel like on number 10, when you're comparing it to the Sea Witch, it definitely looks a lot more muted blue versus when it's by itself. I feel like I can see the green better. Again, it's like the same thing as before. If maybe you use Aquamarine and dilute it if you want your hair to be like a bluish green with a little bit more blue, or you could dilute this one if you like this color, you want it to be a little bit more green. You could dilute this and get a nice light green probably. I do have a handful of dyes that I could compare the diluted sections for, but I probably won't do all of them because that gets kind of repetitive, but I'll do one more, and that will be Jade from Ion. This is before I was numbering my swatches, but this is comparable to number 10, number 9, number 8, and number 7. So when this one is diluted, I feel like it looks a little bit more similar, where it's not super bright and intense, but it's not super, super muted either. I do think there's a little bit more blue in the Jade dye though, so to me it looks more like the one with more Poseidon in it. But that's only when you dilute it. The saturated part is much darker. Alright, so now that we've done the comparisons, let's get into the close-ups. I hope this video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link in the description below to a form you can fill out that gets submitted directly to me. Just remember, I only like to do dyes that do not test on animals. Thank you to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.